of everybody in the room before I welcome. Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. Just be starting in a minute while we admit everyone to the room. You're welcome to go to the chat. There's the chat button down here. There's also a Q&A button for questions to the panelists. But in the chat, you can say hello and where you are at the moment, what the weather's like, if you feel like saying that. And I think we will commence. So, once again, welcome everybody to today's webinar, part of the European Online and Distance Learning Week, which Eden is organising together with several other organisations, such as the Open Distance Learning Association in Australia, the Flexible Learning Association of New Zealand, and even the United States Distance Learning Association, and the National Distance Learning Week has some contributions by the ICDE organization. So we really are a worldwide network organizing this week of webinars. My name's Alistair Creelman. I'm from Linnaeus University in the southeast of Sweden, and I'll be moderating this session. And the title today is Stepping Up to the Plate, How Technology Has Supported Open and Distance Learning During and After the Pandemic. We've been talking about all these issues for so long now about how the pandemic has influenced higher education. It's the theme of this week's of the Distance Learning Week in many ways. In this one, we're looking at really how the tools and the platforms and the people working with them have supported the teachers when the pandemic came along, and how that support and development and professional development for teachers has evolved during the period since the pandemic started. It's still work in progress. There's still a lot to do, but we're going to hear from, we're going to hear 4 examples and 4 initiatives from different parts of Europe where, they have succeeded in helping teachers to move forward in working and expanding the university's infrastructure in terms of supporting online and distance learning. As you can see in the chat, please post questions to these speakers in the Q&A button. Just press there and ask your question, and I will do my best to ask the panelists about that. We're going to run with presentations and some questions, and then when all the presentations are done, then we will have more of a panel discussion. So I just like to work through the guests for today. We have a very distinguished panel here. We have from Romania, from Politehnica University Timișoara, we have Andrei Ternachuk. You want to just say hello?
Hi, everyone.
And from UNED in Madrid, in Spain, Jesus Boticario.
It's a pleasure.
From Learn Life, based in Barcelona, in Spain, Lisa Marie Balaschke.
Hi, everyone.
And from Blackboard, Annabelle Bush.
Hi, it's a pleasure to meet you.
So, with those matters in order, and I see some hellos from Romania and from Zagreb and Croatia. There are now quite a lot of people in there. You're welcome to write your greetings in the chat. Otherwise, I suggest that we move into our presentations. First up, we're going to have Jesus Boticario, and you can introduce yourself a little bit, from UNED in Madrid in Spain. And the title of the presentation is Digital Resources, Methodologies and AI Technologies to Face the Challenges Beyond 2020. So, Jesus, you can take it.
Let me share my screen first. hope you are seeing already presentation. Can you see that? Can you confirm that you're
Good,
okay?
good.
Okay, thank you.
And the subtitling is working.
Okay, great. So you asked me to introduce myself. I'll do it in short. We are the largest probably university in Europe with over 200,000 students, and I'm the Vice Rector of Digitalization and Innovation. Why I'm here? A good question. I've been working all my life long in user modeling and using AI techniques and data mining to provide personalization mainly in educational frameworks. And that's probably the thing, no? And this Vice Rectorate is quite challenging because we are coping with both, okay? We have two sides in here, the technological side and also the methodological side. And that's why hope you are seeing the slides passing. You have the second slide. Can you confirm that?
Oh, yes, it's perfect.
Okay, thank you. I was saying that this is a result of teamwork, okay? And we are all working together in different areas, and that's why the people involved in this Vice Rector have different skills. So the COVID is perhaps the thing that we have overstayed, but to me, it's a confirmation that UNED is provides the right approach. Okay, it's like a blessing in disguise. No, we provide hybrid education, online and face-to-face education, and we provide all those types of access to a university according to the user's needs. Let me go back. Okay, so with the COVID thing, we had to set in no time, okay, many changes at UNED, okay, organizational, technological developments, increase the staff support, the student support, communication strategies, and so forth. So the first thing we had to manage is to take over 80% of our tutoring sessions, which were provided face-to-face online, all of them, okay? That was quite challenging. In all, we have to move over 16,000 face-to-face services for over 400,000 users, students, and all of them online, okay? So the figures are impressive, but I won't like to invest much time in the figures, which are incredible for everyone. But for instance, just we got peaks of over 200,000 weekly connections, and there were days with over 30,000 of them. So, and the funny thing, or the interesting thing actually, is that when September, last September came up, okay, we have to increase those figures. So this is important, no? It's not just the fact that during the pandemic we had to provide that access, but that access is something that is on our current agenda. One of the things that differentiates perhaps our university to others is that we have to cope with 40% of the students with disabilities enrolled at the university level in Spain, okay? That means that we have to care very much with things related to ethical management of data and so forth. That's why we couldn't afford using the tools that many people offer us in order to deal with evaluations, massive evaluations, as soon as I commented in a minute. But we have to develop our own tool. Okay, we develop even one part of the tool is called Verificatio, which is to deal with fraud issues. The tool is being successful, and we are now developing further improvements. We want to use this tool to be an intelligent engine to develop exams, and also something that help us to be in touch with the students while they're doing their exams. What we cannot afford is to record all the sessions, okay? Because of the current legislation and because of something that I will comment later on. Well, the numbers are incredible to me in the first place, but this last year we have carried out over 700,000 exams at UNED. So it's incredible. This is like an engine thing, okay? We also had to increase the support to our faculty and technical people at UNED, okay? In terms of the faculty, we increased the webinars that we provided to them, the tools, the guidelines. We set up a community where all of them share their experience, their problems. We tried to cope with all of them, and we were finally successful. Thanks to them in the first place, okay? They were really, really involved in improving and dealing with the challenges of the situation. As I said before, we have to deal with the people who, not just the disabled, okay? We have many students that because of their current situation, they are in the army or working elsewhere, are enrolled at UNED. We have to attend also the people who are in prison as well. So this is a peculiar university, and we have to care of all these things. In the end, the idea, and we were successful, is that no one left behind. The communication strategy was very much focused on our students, okay? We increased as well the well-being and the things related to how to care with the psychological issues involved in dealing with the situation. And the ministry called us and told us with, in the first place, with WOC, you have to provide a website to all the universities in Spain to support them, because you are the ones who know how to deal with this. Okay, we did our best, finally, with the support of all the universities, and we developed a website that was quite successful in 3 different areas. We provide teaching and learning online support, digital contents, and psychological support, as I said before. The number of courses increased dramatically, and I just want to point out one of these channels that we support at UNED that is focused for your interest in providing technological courses which take very much care of interaction needs of people with disabilities and others. So the COVID came up, and AI was going to be the new engine to support this. Huh? Artificial intelligence is going to change everything, apparently. Well, that was the case in our vice rectorate. We followed beforehand, okay, before this pandemic came up, our own strategic plan, which was very much focused on supporting education with AI technologies. So the plan that we launched at UNED 2 years ago covered ethical framework proposal, data recovery and curing in order to deal with the right type of data, data analysis, evidence-based interventions, and provide predictive modeling. The first thing that we did, and this is probably, again, something interesting to share with you, is that we provide the whole faculty members and the students and the administrative people, everyone, the whole university, the opportunity to decide what they wanted to do with these technologies, in order not just to cover with the privacy and ethical issues involved in the regulations, but our own ethical approach to this. And we came up with our own ethical framework. and we are already applying that framework at UNED, which includes 12 different cautions in order to deal with these issues. In terms of data, the things are not that easy. And in particular, in a large university like UNED with over 1 million educational objects, just to comment one of the figures, okay? So the first problem is to set up the right infrastructure, not just the classical single data warehouse, but as well data lake and other facilities in order to increase the possibilities of analysis. So, in terms of analysis, we have to as well improve how we are going to monitor the use of data, okay? The reports that come from courses, degrees, and faculties, the reports that comes as well from analyzing diverse inputs from different faculties which follow different methodologies. And the situation is completely different, okay? If you bear in mind what could be the interactions in computer science versus philology, you can imagine the differences. And well, the next step is to find evidence, okay? This is not a matter of discussions, but to find evidence from data in order to improve education. And the final step is how to deal with the feedback, okay? And in this regard, it's not just using the classical dashboards, the approach, but as well to develop our own recommender systems. So we are right now improving the dashboards that we provide, but as well, we have already 2 new recommender systems that we are going to deploy. One focus on prevention, retention, and the other one on assisting the students when they are enrolled. In terms of improving the production of contents, we develop as well our own tool, okay? We developed a new tool called GICU to facilitate how the teachers combine different information sources easily with drag and drop and provide outputs in different formats from EPUB, PDF, whatever, you name it. And finally, the final step of the changes is to improve, promote, and increase innovation in education. And to this, we have set up an innovation hub. Right now, there is a group of teachers that have recently awarded to be proposing, they are experts in this field, okay, proposing what should be involved in this hub. We have already an idea. The idea is to cover intelligent search engines, recommending systems, and predictive models, all of them based on sharing all the innovation educational approaches at UNED. And finally, we are already improving our tools, sharing the innovation that comes from the research of many teachers at UNED. And so we are taking on board their own tools and to deploy them at university level. Because I think I'm using too much time, I won't go into detail, but just to finish up this introduction of the things that we are doing, we are as well dealing with something that is very relevant and is going to be increasingly relevant, which is not to deal just with the classical course online, but also the social interventions as UNED. And to provide an ecological system that combines all these tools. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. That was a very impressive presentation, and I think it raises many questions that a lot of us are working with. You seem to have an extremely comprehensive solution, and the use of AI is very intriguing. I must admit, I trust that the slides will be made public or made available to everybody who is attending this in due course. And I think there's a lot to investigate there. If you have any good link, you could put it in the chat, please, Jesus, because maybe that people can then start looking not so much at your slides, but maybe to your website or somewhere where people can immediately go and see what you're doing. Looking for some questions. Please write your questions in the Q&A section. If you're not quite sure how to do that, it is possible to write them in the chat, but we would like to have them in the Q&A. I must say, there were many things that I wondered about, really. You talked about support to students. What about this? I was thinking about the soft side of support, because one of the things that the students have, a lot of feedback that's come that I've seen was about more, the softer side, counseling, remote counseling during lockdown, various other study, advice and help and support. How did you deal with that?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, actually. We have a plan called Wellbeing, okay, which involves mentoring, coaching, and sharing experiences among them. Right now, the new students at UNED are supported in terms of a culture, and because this type of education is challenging for many students, okay, many of them, the majority actually, okay, there are people who could be in the peculiar situations, and most of them work and have family, issues, so they don't have that much time. And the approach is to empower them with the right focus and tools to support a self-made plan which finally make them being successful. And it's not that easy. The main issue here is the dropout rates. And as we always say, if we got them in the first exam, we made it. So it's incredible. But yeah, the statistics and data provide this evidence, okay? If we get them for the first exam, they get hooked somehow, okay? And they stay with us, yeah.
Just wondering if any of the panelists, the other panelists, have any questions. Anything spontaneous?
I actually do have a question. You were mentioning accessibility as one of the key elements as well. How do you measure progress that you're making on accessibility?
Well, that's an open question. Thank you very much. I mean, accessibility is not something that can be fulfilled in terms of a tool or of an instance, okay? It's a process. It's an ongoing process, and that's the challenge, okay? The challenge is to provide tools and protocols, okay, that make the people follow certain rules, okay? And it's not that difficult. It helps a lot, AI technologies and metadata, things that support better personalization of the services that we are providing. So it's a win-win, okay? And the people, it's not that difficult to follow this. There are many people who think that this is very difficult, and it's not that much, using the right tools.
Okay, thanks very much. I'd like to move on now, and we will move to the next speaker. So we have Andrei Ternauchuk from Timisoara, and your story, because it is a story, as I understand, the road to openness, the IT admin story. So looking forward to hearing your angle on things from an IT admin perspective. So yeah, off you go, Andrei.
Thank you, Alistair. As you have said, my story is from a different perspective than Jesus's, because he presented an overarching strategy that his university has applied. I will present a much lower perspective entitled The Road to Openness, the IT Admin Story. So I will begin with a very short biography, which is relevant to this story. 10 years ago, I finished my PhD studies, and as some of the achievements of that research, I contributed to the development of the e-learning platform that the Polytechnic University of Timișoara in Romania is currently using. 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago, distance learning courses began here. They were in a hybrid format because even though they had the materials online and some activities, they also had face-to-face meetings, and the evaluation also stood in a classroom, because this is the way that the accreditation worked at that time. So 10 years ago, as I said, we began working on the current platform. I was the main developer then. Me and another colleague who managed the server side of things, the configuration and so on. We developed this platform, which in the beginning only served the distance learning courses. And afterwards, it began to grow at a steady pace, first incorporating the master studies in the university from all the 10 faculties, but also once professors found out about the platform, they began requesting and incorporating their bachelor courses in the platform. So as I said, we had a steady pace of growth over the years. We learned a lot of things. We developed the tools we needed, but the team behind the platform, the technical team, has not grown very spectacularly. So before the pandemic, we had the lead developer, which was myself, and a few colleagues who worked with all of the management of the courses and the users and so on. But then, of course, 1.5 years ago, the pandemic happened. We had a solution which was adapted to the needs of the university for that blended scenario, but all of a sudden, all of the people involved in the educational process, all of the 15,000 students and 3,000 or 4,000 faculty members had to use the tools which we had in order to compensate for the quarantine and all the lack of physical meeting and physical interactions, in order to not completely shut down the educational process. This is actually an overview of what we have done and up until March of this year. Maybe we'll get back to this at some point if it's relevant. But as I said, we had a very steady growth up until last year. This is the number of total users on the platform. It's not that spectacular, the number, because as I said, some of the bachelor courses also found themselves on the platform before the pandemic hit. However, if we look at the number of courses, we see that they more than doubled. This is only the first semester of the previous academic year. And this is the full 2020-2021 academic year. So as I said, it's a lot of new users and a lot of new interactions. For instance, the first interactions when we started compiling these statistics 10-11 years ago, it's insignificant compared to the actions, to the logs, to the clicks that the users had on our platform. So we identified 3 main challenges or challenge types where we had to step up. First of all, we had the infrastructure, the IT infrastructure, because we had a data center with the necessary servers and the configuration which was adequate to the requirements of the platform at that point. However, as I said, we increased exponentially the use of the platform, so we had to find solutions in that area. Also, all of the professors who up until that point were classical learning scenarios, were implementing them, face-to-face meetings and so on, physical activities like laboratories or seminaries. All of a sudden, they needed to learn how to use the tools that we were providing. and also support for the students who were as well thrown into this chaos. So they had to learn how to use the tools, and also the problems that the students faced, like access or any sort of technical problems, all of a sudden multiplied very much. So that small team that up until that point took care of all of these things from the e-learning center, all of a sudden couldn't make it work with all of this additional work. So from the infrastructure point of view, we chose to go to the cloud. Of course, we contracted professional cloud hosting services. The data center was kept only as a backup solution, but the main applications are now in the cloud. Also, we had to incorporate all of the elements that make live face-to-face synchronous learning possible, starting, of course, with audio-video conferencing solutions, but also many types of new interactions which had to supplement the lack of face-to-face interactions, as I mentioned previously, like the hands-on laboratory work, which is severely lacking in an online setting. So this was our solution. Also, in the training area, we began training the teachers. We started holding webinars. They were open webinars where tutors or facilitators from all types of learning or educational levels were invited, from high school or even lower levels. We encouraged them by issuing badges, open badges for participation, and we had a very successful run of more than a year of online webinars, weekly webinars, with a lot of participants and invited speakers, presenters who shared their experience in dealing with this new situation. Also, we developed a lot of guides and tutorials, most of them in video format. But as I said, the team developing them was not that large. So we involved the students as well, because this way they were included in the solution, and we found that they were very eager. Some of them, of course, they were master students in specific specializations, but they helped create all of these tutorials, which then were used as open educational resources within the courses, either for professors or students. Of course, not all of them were created by the students. Also, we tried to create some common areas where professors could share their experience, where they could create best practices guides or case studies for everybody to learn. So we had this openness to incorporate all of these experiences in order for everyone to be able to share it and use it in their day-to-day activities. Also, we try to create a cafe-like zone where professors could discuss and openly share their experience, but also for the students, we had some areas which were dedicated to their well-being, which was previously mentioned. There were, for instance, recommendations from the university library, recommended reading. We also had some guides or advice from the physical education department in order to keep everybody moving to a minimal level and keeping the health as well as the mental well-being as high as possible. On the support side, as I said, the small team which was behind all of this started dealing with a lot of tickets. We used the OS ticket open source system to allow any users, students or professors, to open support tickets in either technical or administrative areas. But also we had the support email. As you can see, it's not a surprise to anyone that at the time of the start of the pandemic, March or April last year, we saw all of these spikes. We dealt with this by expanding our team. We started incorporating administrators from the 10 faculties which are active in our university. So we delegated some of these support roles, and they helped us, for instance, create all of those 5,000 courses in a very short amount of time, so that the downtime to the learning process was minimal. This is just the core team of the e-learning center, because as I said, there aren't many of us. About 4 or 5 of these people are the ones who worked in the technical side, which I here try to present today. So this is my story as an IT admin. We had a challenge, a very big one. We tried to adapt, and as the title of my presentation suggests, the solution was to open our operations and to receive the help of the students and of the professors, as well as new people, because IT admins usually tend to keep everything to themselves because they have the overview of how everything works. So this was a very big step for our small team, for me personally, and this is why this presented an opportunity for me to expand this even on the development side, because we started incorporating students who are very well versed in programming, and under our guidance we started developing all the necessary tools which are not available or needed adjusting to the requirements of the university. Very briefly, this was my presentation. I am open to questions now. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Once again, I can see a lot of parallels to the presentation from Jesus on how your departments or how your sort of staff have reacted to the pandemic crisis and have then built on it. And I really do like the involvement of students is very impressive, and the openness is also very impressive. I see a question from Lisa in the chat, but maybe you can say it.
Just a moment, sorry, because I'm sharing, I can't see it.
My question was, what are the plans? What are the plans for growing what you have already done, established during the pandemic?
Well, there isn't that much room to grow, because at this point, pretty much all of the study programs in our university are currently online. So only changes to the curricula, maybe creating new courses that replace some of the old ones, will be necessary. Of course, there are new students all the time. So even professors, young professors, or somebody who's new to the system will of course need support. However, the biggest challenge was those couple of months last year when we had that switch. Growing at the moment means maybe fine-tuning technically the platform and the plugins and the functionality of the of the different pieces of this puzzle, and maybe bringing new functionalities, because all of a sudden we were working with many new teachers who had many new ideas or requirements, and we tried to keep up with them. And in the breathing room we had over the summer, or in periods with less activity needed for support, for instance, we tried to improve it. I can give you an example. We embedded in the platform a Zoom plugin which allowed professors to create Zoom meetings from within the course. All of the students who wanted to participate to a lecture needed to access that link. So they had to log into the platform, access the course, and then click on the link. And that was pretty much their instant action within the platform. But this created some very high traffic times, for instance, at 10 o'clock in the morning or at 12 o'clock. So we developed a little plugin which, outside of the courses, created all of the Zoom links for a certain user with a minimal interface which consumed very fewer resources. So this is an example of adjustment we were managed to make, and we will continue to make as the need arises. And fortunately, as I said, students are also interested in helping us, and we have very talented students who are willing to develop side by side with us all of the necessary functionalities.
Okay, Andrea, if you could stop sharing your slide, and then we can see you in larger view. We've got a question from Elena in the Q&A. What was the most satisfying moment switching to online teaching? What gave you the most satisfaction in the transition?
Well, aside from an IT admin, I am also an educator. I'm a lecturer, so I also have direct contact with students. I teach mainly in the master's courses, where up until the pandemic, attendance was very relaxed. So there were small groups of students which I work with, about 20 officially, but only a few of them managed to actually arrive when I had lectures, maybe 5, 6, 7, something like this. So when we switched online, all of a sudden, most of those 20, 25 students were suddenly online, and I could talk to them in real time, and this was actually quite satisfying for me. Of course, there are a lot of drawbacks to this, but this is one of the highlights of going online.
Thank you. There's a question in the chat there about what are the innovative parts of the curriculum, but maybe if you could answer that in the chat.
Okay.
To everyone, that means we can move on, and I'd like to welcome to the stage Lisa Marie Blaschke, who, well, Eden regulars will know her very well as a member of the executive committee in the past, and a very, very active Eden member and senior fellow of Eden, but has now moved on to the other side, and it belongs to a very interesting startup in Barcelona called LearnLife. So take it away, Lisa.
Thank you, Alistair. It's great to see everybody today. And as Alistair said, I recently made the jump from working in academia, primarily in online and distance learning, to work for a startup called LearnLife, which I will talk a little bit about now. I am going to talk about the technology, but I'm a strong believer, as most ODL academics and scholars are, in the pedagogy. And so I will be emphasizing that as well, and the role that it plays. So let me start by sharing my screen. Okay, share sound. Great, I'm gonna put this in presentation mode. Okay. I took my mask off. I may have to put it back on again in the case that one of the learners walks into the set into the room that I'm in, because we are still required to wear masks. So the topic I'd like to talk to you about today is how we create environments for learner-centered learning and really pave the way for high flex learning. The organization that I work for is called LearnLife, and it was established in around 2016, 2017 in Barcelona, and with their urban hub, which had 3 learners at the time. We had about 60 learners last year and now have over 100 this year, in addition to opening what we call an eco hub or a nature hub, which is on the beaches of Castelldefels, outside of Barcelona, for primary year learners. And so what the goal of LearnLife is, or the vision of LearnLife is to create an ecosystem of learning that connects learners from around the world. Some of our ambitions by 2030, and any of you who are familiar with the OECD publication on their views for what learning will look like, this is very much in alignment with that. Our goal is to have engaged over 100 million learners with the idea of self-determined learning and personal learning within and helping learners discover their passions and interests. And to have engaged 4 million educators, 100,000 schools through our Hubling projects, and to have 2,000 hubs created around the world. And we have already started. There are hubs in Switzerland. There are learning hubs in in Germany. There will be one opening up in Hamburg next fall, and we have hubs potentials in Costa Rica and a number of places around the world. Our approach is really to implement self-determined learning, which is moving away from standardized learning, passive, scripted, dependent, to more self-directed and self-determined learning, where learners are actually being more creative, asking questions, are engaged, collaborative, and are applying what they've learned. So another thing that is really, I think, critical about Learn Life that I wanted to emphasize is, and I'm not going to read through all of this, you can certainly read through it now, is our positive relationships, that we develop these kinds of relationships with our learners, that there's empathetic collaboration, that there is respect between the learning guides, we don't call them teachers, and the learners, and that they grow through adventure. Failing is a very important part of what we do at Learn Life, so that we can learn from those experiences and apply what we've learned to future experiences, and to have really fair communities working together to ensure that everybody is included, and also authentic trust. So we have been primarily face-to-face in our teaching and in our learning since before the pandemic started, and things were going very well for Learn Life. Was identified as one of the best startups in Barcelona, I think last year and the year before. And then the pandemic hit, and it took them 24 hours to go online with the learning guides who were not trained in online teaching. I talked to one of the learners yesterday, and he said, we just flipped a switch and they adapted to it. And it was just incredible. If you want to hear more about how they did that, you can go to this YouTube video. I'm not going to play that, but I am going to play you a video of what experiences the learners had during the pandemic. It was put together by one of the learning guides about how they just some of the things that they did during the pandemic. The priority when the pandemic first hit was on really the mental health and wellness of our learners, to ensure that they were safe at home, that they felt safe at home, and also that our learning guides did not become burned out. Another important thing was to maintain relationships and to keep those relationships ongoing. And that was mostly done through real talks and learner guide check-ins every day. Some of the challenges that we ran into, there was the learning guides needed to be trained in how to do online learning. Learners were disappearing. There was a lack of social opportunities. And so this was improved on with constant iterations throughout the process. So the learning guides would meet every day and discuss how they could improve on the processes. So they were really adapting on the move, or as my colleague Sam likes to say, we were building the plane as it was flying. And so what they did to really adapt to that is, or what we did is to have mentor meetings every week to engage and re-engage with the learners, to have these check-ins every single day, individual ones with the learners, to see how they were doing, how they were managing their learning. Learners were setting their own schedules and being self-directed even before the pandemic hit, which I think is a very interesting aspect. In a lot of the schools that transitioned into online environments, learners were very passive and the schedules were set by the teachers. Because the Learn Life learners were already self-directed, it gave them an opportunity to more easily transition into an online environment. They had as many offline activities as much as possible. We tried to reduce screen time as much as possible and really focus on building community in an online environment. The families were also involved and they incorporated their home experiences using resources from home. And we also used a lot of open educational resources. Technologies that were used, Google Suite apps were used, Monday.com, Basecamp, Zoom, WhatsApp, email, Miro. And this is an example of how we used whatever technology was available to support the teaching and learning approach that needed to be used. So I'm just going to quickly show you this video, which gives you insight into their experiences.
Ladies and gents, this is the moment you've waited for.
PT Barnum, at your service. I'm putting together a show, and I need a star. Every one of us is special, and nobody is like anyone else. That's the point of my show. Ready? Showtime. No one ever made a difference by being like everyone else.
So I realize that that is probably one of the least academic videos that you've probably seen more recently. And so let me just switch back. What you can see though through that experience or through that video, I think it really captures the excitement and the energy of the kids. Even though they were in lockdown, they set challenges for each other and they were constantly supportive of each other. And they used all kinds of different technologies, mostly Zoom, in order to interact, but also using video to show what they've learned and also to share and to challenge each other in their learning. One of the things that I think that also has come out of this experience is we've been able to create or begin to create really truly high flex environments. And this is just a definition from Ken Steele. Tony Bates has written a lot about high flex in some of his work, but it really lets students shift seamlessly between doing face-to-face or doing online wherever they are and whenever they want to. And some of those design principles are things like learner choice, equivalency, reusability, accessibility, but also empathy, trust, and respect. And I think one of the reasons why LearnLife has been very able to do this, to move learners into an online environment in a very easy or I guess not easy, but in a smoother way than a lot of traditional schools, is that we have learner-centered learning environments where the learner is the agent of their learning, positive personal relationships that are empathetic, trustful, and with respect, self-determined and self-directed learners where the teachers are guides, and co-creation of the learning experience and pathways, and also flexible and accessible technology choice depending on whatever the pedagogical need is. And this is why it works for LearnLife, learner-centered. This sounds to me like I'm selling LearnLife, but I'm super excited about what we're doing. And I think for me, it brings together a lot of the things that we've done within online learning and how we can help kids to really adapt to whatever learning experience they have, whether it's online, whether it's blended, and it's applying a pedagogy that's very learner-centered and technology that is agile, and then this vision of bringing together learners from across the world. So that is my presentation, and I'm going to stop sharing.
Thank you. Intriguing indeed. I once again invite questions. Please type your questions in the Q&A or in the chat. I don't mind, and whichever channel you want to use. One thing that on the last slide there, I can't help. I mean, I like language. I saw the word hubbling. What's a hubbling?
A hubbling is a smaller version of a hub that actually exists within the school. And we've got in Hamburg, we just signed on for a few thousand schools to create these hubblings, which are a place where kids can actually practice self-determined learning, and they can discover their passions and really develop those in a self-directed and self-determined way.
Nice. If you belong to one, could you be a hublet?
Yes. I never thought of that, Alistair, but yes.
Oh, there's lots of possibilities there. While waiting for some, if there, so please type your questions. I was thinking that, I mean, there's a lot of talk, hybrid, high flex, high Cronus, bi-Cronus. There are many, many terms being banded around at the moment. And it strikes me sometimes that we're trying to be, I don't know, how flexible can we really be before we actually confuse everybody? Because I think there are some students, young and old, who can deal with a multi-tool environment and can quickly switch between media sorts and can thrive in this kind of very, very wide-ranging environment. But there are others who can get extremely stressed by this. And how do we deal? I think both young and old I've met who get stressed even in more traditional learning environments at universities, where basically if we introduce more than one or two platforms, they get stressed.
Yeah.
How is there a danger that we become so flexible that people can't see what we're trying to do?
I would say that there is a danger, and I think we always have to think about who our audience is and where our learners are and what kind of scaffolding they need or what kind of supports they need. I mean, we have a number of neurodiverse learners here, and so we have come up, and they actually have difficulties within the face-to-face environment. Become very distracted, are quickly agitated. And so some of them are actually learning from home 2 days of the week, just so that they can have an opportunity to have that quiet and that peace that they need in order to learn in a non-distracting environment. So yes, we really need to think about what kind of settings work best. And I think that's when personal learning becomes very important.
Yes, you've got a congratulations in the Q&A there. Someone who enjoyed what you did, but no particular question. If I look at the other panelists, any ideas that any thoughts you have from this, or comments on what we've been talking about?
If I may?
Yeah, Andre?
It's very interesting and very interactive and very for the younger generations is very motivating, everything else. But I think that in order to implement this on a larger scale, the curricula needs to be adapted or needs to change significantly, because at least here in Romania, there are still very rigid and strict rules about what formal learning means, especially in the official high school or university settings. So I believe that what you presented is the way to go, but this also needs to go to the top and allow the shifting the paradigm in order to incorporate all of this interaction and all of this higher motivation into what can be achieved and what skills can be developed. So it's not a question, more of a commentary.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. If we look at many of the future skills frameworks and the policy documents that are coming out of the EU, they're all talking about the kinds of skills that learners need, and we're not developing those within higher education as much as we could. And I think we need to start with the younger learners, and that's why I'm here. So I'm very excited about what we're doing. There will be research that will be published on this eventually.
Hopefully we'll be able to reproduce it.
Yes, I hope so too. Thank you, Andre.
Okay, we'll need to move on to our final point. But Lisa, if you, some of the links that you had in your presentation, admittedly, we can access the PowerPoints later, but maybe you could post some of them in the chat so that there will be people who may not have time to look at the slides later and would like the links now. So that would be nice. Okay. Finally, but not least, we have two representatives from Blackboard, a company that needs no introduction on the educational technology scene. We have Annabelle Bush and we have Nicolas Albuz. If you could both highlighted here. You're going to talk about digital leadership in transformative times. I will let you introduce yourselves and your roles in your company and so on, but if you upload your slides, and yeah, it's all yours.
So Nico, would you like to be first, and then I can jump into the presentation?
Yes, sure. So hi, everyone. Thank you very much for attending that session. I am Nicolas Albouz. I am the regional vice president at Blackboard, covering multiple European countries, as well as Africa. And yeah, I think we went through some very interesting time when it comes to distance education, as everybody mentioned in the previous presentation. And we would be more than happy to share some of our insights, you know, at large scales when it comes to what we've been seeing as well. Annabelle, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. So my name is Annabelle Bush. I'm Senior Solutions Engineer for Blackboard since late 2012, early 2013. And before that, I was the manager of the e-learning infrastructure at the University of Vienna for nearly 10 years and built up that infrastructure more or less from scratch with the team there. So today, what we would like to do is to give you a bit of a workshop report out of different experience that we've had with clients, also with the approval from the clients to talk about their story. And with that, I'm going to share my screen quickly. So I am going to share an application. So can you all see my screen?
I guess we can.
Yes.
I guess, yeah, okay, perfect. So so I changed the title slightly just to be a bit more innovative on that. So it titles with From Lockdown to Top Down or Bottom Up, because that is basically what has been done during that pandemic time and the first, second and third wave. And we are now nearly experiencing the fourth. I've just learned, so based in Vienna, we are having 8,000 new infections today. In Austria. So that's digital transformation lessons learned from a global pandemic. And I decided to choose an image from Jonathan McHugh that was initially posted in the Financial Times in 2020 with the university pillars that are groaning under the weight of books and the challenge of suddenly needing to transfer everything from digital to everything from analogous to digital from one moment to the next. So this has been described as the big nudge moment in education to drive EdTech solutions adoption. So that has maybe someone of you has heard of that book from Richard H. Teller and Cass R. Sunstein, which describes the nudge that can help policymakers and other choice designers lead people to make better choices without restricting their freedom to choose. So also finding finding out that no choice is ever neutral because the way a choice is presented, and so because of the way a choice is presented, and even if randomly affects the way people engage with it. So I have the book here, it's in German at the moment. So if you may, you cannot see it because it's white. Just wanted to point it to the camera. And so COVID has been described as the big nudge moment. And basically, so our experience with some of the institutions was that academia was not really prepared for that. So, and that should be described by that little graphic here. So distance learning is not a priority. So that has never been, neither has the virtual meeting sphere at universities. So according to the World Economic Forum, over 1.2 billion students were out of the classroom and had to be educated from one moment to the other. So that's what this tries to. And then our reality, you all know, everybody has experienced that. So, so that should be illustrated by that. So I took it out from a website that is highlighting the funniest caricatures that have been produced last year. So one is that I liked it, found it quite funny. And I also like the South African one here with Nelson Mandela looking down and said 21 days of lockdown is not really an issue. So, but what we experienced, and this is a screenshot of our server or login group monitor at the peak of the second wave and the start of the academic year in October 2020. So this is the European login group from the Frankfurt data center. So the Frankfurt data center is also mirrored in the area of Frankfurt due to GDPR requirements. where we would usually count, so this is showing the number of concurrent users, as you can see here on the 13th of October, there was a peak that went above 1,800,000 concurrent users, which is a lot. So the infrastructure is now prepared for 4 million concurrent, which can get elastic and scale up depending on the usage. But so usually a normal pre-COVID usage that you would have seen in this graph here would have been down to 30 to 50K connections. So a big transformation has happened. So we saw only on our infrastructures 9,000% of increase in the use of virtual classrooms and a 60% increase in the use of mobile devices. To be a bit more specific on that one, so it has, of course, that nudge moment accelerated the adoption of Blackboard's digital tools in 2020 compared to 2019. So 400% growth in Blackboard Learn SaaS usage. So that is our learning management solution. 4,800. So that is, I think, just for a specific amount of time in the use of virtual classroom, growth in mobile app use, student support services, school to home communication. So that is what we could analyze out of our infrastructures. So the challenge was, and with that, I'm going to soon jump into the client examples, was to provide high quality personalized teaching to a large number of students all of a sudden, and also provide for large scale, not only environment, but also for large scale sessions in some of the cases. And that is what I'm trying to show you now. So example one was the Centre National d'Enseignement à Distance, so who was already a client, but who was able to scale up to the whole French Ministry of Education. What does that mean? So here you see Emmanuel Macron, President of the French Republic, speak to fifth graders via Blackboard Collaborate, which is our virtual classroom solution. And the project that underlies that, or that what that picture is the result of, is that the project was extended by the French Ministry of Education to 3.7 million primary and secondary students in K-12, which means that every teacher in France had the opportunity to create a classroom for their students with a very, very simple and easy to connect solution in order to really serve 3.7 million users from one day to the other. So literally from one day to the other. So it was an implementation time of roughly 2 weeks, because they already had a login group, so a so-called login group in place. But maybe Nico, you want to talk a bit about it?
Yeah, thank you very much, Annabelle. So I think what's interesting is that le Centre National d'Enseignement à Distance, CNED, is very similar to UNED, right? UNED is the Spanish CNED somehow, or CNED is the French UNED. You can put it the other way around. What is curious is that, so the French Ministry of Education came to CNED and say, you're going to have to support the whole of K-12 in France, which was something at that scale that never ever happened in France, right? And so we're very pleased to work together with them to find out what are going to be the challenges, what are going to be the need, the requirement, and so on. And all of a sudden, we came to a position where we were, I think, having more than 2 million kids joining our virtual class solution on a daily basis. And so we could help them also to monitor through that data. That was quite of a journey, but we were extremely pleased to participate to that mission of bringing continuity to the teaching and learning activity in France for the kids, and so on and so forth. So very, very, very proud of that project.
Thank you, Nico. So that was a nationwide project to sustain teaching for all teachers and students in France. So here it's a bit described how the courses were classified and how they were set up, and the 3 different areas, l'école primaire, le collège, et le lycée. What was key here was the scalability to that large amount of users, so 3.7 million. Second example is the University of Vienna, also a large-scale example, not as big as CNED, but the University of Vienna at the moment hosts 90 to 100,000 students, so it always depends on the registered users. So there are much more than 100,000 registered users on the system, with 10,000 teachers or professors and staff. which is considered a large-scale institution. And they had a very specific setting. So they were using Big Blue Button as well in integration with their self-hosted Moodle, and started when it was clear in Austria that from March 16 on, all learning would be distance learning. So there was a decree, a governmental decree, that no learning was allowed to take place at the university physically. So what they tried was to just blow up the resources on their own, also just increase the resources on their own server infrastructure, but that did not work. So it was scaling up too much. And in a Big Blue Button session, I think there were only 100 people allowed, or 60. I think that is the one that is supported. And that was quite difficult. So while large-scale universities are often very skilled in running their self-hosted learning management systems in a clustered virtualized environment, the challenge that they are facing is that in-house resources are often highly insufficient to support the increasing and with that skyrocketing demand of scalable web conferencing sessions to support that demand. So spinning up those resources quickly, like server instances and configuration tasks, constitute another challenge, which is often tightened by the fact that in a crisis, all hands are needed to fulfill the most critical tasks. So they were just struggling on different fronts. So to describe the project a little bit, the university had to be switched to home learning from now on. So basically that was the order. And so there was a very strong need for large virtual classes that would scale up to 500 people per session. So that describes a bit it. So we tried to help them with an LTI and the Moodle plugin, and integrated our virtual classroom solution, Collaborate, into their Moodle infrastructure. And so it didn't even, I would say, survive the pilot. The usage was so high that we actually transformed the pilot into the production site, because the environment was increasing and increasing, because the adoption of the virtual classroom was so high. So there was a crisis management and dialogue with the different stakeholders, so the Vice Rectorate for teaching staff, students, so they created expert teams for counseling and help desk. And that finally led to the fact that they implemented that. And let's quickly look at the timeline, and I think that we can do that quickly. But so the first call we received was on the 17th of March. So the 16th was the day when the decree came out. Then we did a proof of concept, did first tests on the system. The rector announced the availability of the tool to all staff and students. There was our services welcome, and then the environment just increased until we did the final signature. And the full operation was, so the system was in full operation by the end of March, and has increased since then. To transition over to the third example, I want to stay in Vienna. So, and I would like to talk to you about the University of Veterinary Medicine, Vienna. So the VetMed Uni, which doesn't have so many students, but is usually a solely practice-oriented institution. So what you could experience is watching surgery on a cow, for example. I've watched this. It is really impressive, actually, when you get into that surgery hall and then you have a cow and so on, with anesthesis, but lying there. And for that, it was highly necessary to just switch from presence teaching to online teaching. And according to what our colleagues at the University of Veterinary Medicine told us, they were very well prepared, because they had prepared the infrastructural measures, and also they already had the solutions in place. So the VetMed has been using the Blackboard learning platform for more than 15 years, with adding additional functionalities over the years, of course, and has also been successfully using the integratable virtual classroom Collaborate since 2015. I think that was the winter semester. And since March 2020, they had to take immediate measures as well, of course. So they had crisis management. They defined communication channels. They staffed their help desk. They expanded the tool landscape with some lecture recordings. And the feedback from them was very interesting. So due to that nudge moment, there were many professors that had never used the digital landscape that they were providing before, but were very happy with what they found. So I think I'll show what they show to us. So because it's very programmatic, teaching before COVID-19 looked like this. So here you see the surgery, also the, so it's really a practice university because it's medical. And here that was teaching under COVID-19. So you see that they are showing the turtle into the camera, and it was really very impressive how they transformed the education project. So that's project, that is how the e-learning, one of the e-learning projects is called, into a distance learning project. So this is some of their feedback. So due to high practical orientation, the development of new formats with the involvement of students and teachers had to be developed, so that it had to be done. So with a virtual outpatient clinic, they expanded the live streaming scenarios. They created and expanded the instructions and video tutorials. Some of them were already in place. Other resources as well, and also raised awareness for copyright and data protection. So, and of course, they also went down new ways of the use for digital platforms in addition to teaching and research. And so to give you a bit of a readable story, so there is for the German speakers here, but there is also, so we have a translation feature, which is called Blackboard Ally. So there's a translation feature on our website with which you might be able to use an English version of that. So their mission is teaching with responsibility, researching with vision, and healing with ambition. And they have published quite an interesting paper, which is comprising a couple of pages. So I think it's about 5-6 pages, also with professor interviews in their magazine, so Magazin der Veterinärmedizinischen Universität Wien. And it's highly interesting to read that case study. So we are publishing a similar case study on our website, just to give you the possibility for further reading. So what are the general lessons learned out of this? In terms of scalability, a true platform is important. So we need scalability, elasticity, and business continuity, especially in times of high concurrent usage. What we also discovered or have seen were many SaaS migrations during the COVID crisis. So if we had self-hosted still, they all moved to SaaS in the region. The solution has to follow user-centric design principles. It has to be very easy in order to scale up to millions of users. And it has to be completely device agnostic. And the pedagogical horizon should not be left out of scope. So those tools have to be designed for education with a practical outline. You have to be open, institutions were open to change formats for digital teaching. And of course, having an interaction whiteboard, surveys, and chat that enables really context. So that's part of the feedback that we had. And I want to point out one, so especially the practice-oriented institutions were using a tool that is called ATEM Mini for lecture hall streaming. So in our virtual classroom, for example, you can choose a second camera as a lab setting. And this was used a lot with that ATEM Mini to switch different cameras and screens and show it in lecture halls or stream it to lecture halls. This is especially starting now when it comes to hybrid teaching, because many universities prepared for hybrid teaching during summer. The last thing that I would like to discuss is, so distance learning has definitely become a priority, as you can see here. So I've changed the graphic a little bit. But the only thing that I want to add to that one, so it's not only about scalability and elasticity. I think one of the big lessons learned that we had from the provider side is the importance of platform. So platform is not just an LMS or not just a virtual classroom functionality, so not just solution, but a group of technologies that are used as a base upon which other applications, processes, or capabilities are developed. So evolving technology and new functional elements will expand and develop within that platform over time. So it has to be open. And what we understand is that or what we recognized during the pandemic is that we needed to design a completely new underlying platform based on a modern architecture and infrastructure. So if our clients were ever going to be able to sort out these messy bits of integrations of large scale infrastructural needs and realize the vision of the EduCourse would put it next generation digital learning environment. And so here's what we came up with as critical elements for this future state. So it had to be, I'm sorry, so I've switched the slide. It had to be fully SaaS-based, so scalable, available, and always up to date, and ensuring the systems were up to date, to offer multi-tenancy, built on microservices, and integrations must all work through a REST API, a single API standard for all services, including a single central data lake, also to be able to aggregate data across all applications and services. So this is the next step, because people need information out of the internet and out of the applications they're using. And the UI should be built as a single page web app, built with responsive web pages and with mobile applications that are included natively. So that is a bit of our setup and infrastructure that we found necessary. With that, I would like to close. So here's a quick summary of what I just tried to present. And thank you for joining that Blackboard session.
Okay, thanks very much. We're nearing the end of our session. There's a question from Andras. Maybe it needs to be a fairly quick answer, but what technical background do you need to use the BBB for so many students? Not sure what you mean by BBB.
No, I think
BBB is
yeah.
big blue button. It's another version. Sorry,
big blue button. Yeah,
that is EdTech speak. So it's
no. So do you wanna? Is it okay if I take that question, Annabelle?
Yeah, of course.
So one very single. So Big Blue Button is a great piece of technology to support distance learning virtual class. I think it's quite good. The only thing is we understand based on our experience that there is a challenge when it comes to scalability. So this is something you can download, you can set up in your own data center, and that's quite flexible in that sense. When you want to reach large number of students, Big Blue Button is not the kind of solution you can use for that, right? So that's the feedback we receive from the people that have been using it.
Okay, Annabelle, if you could stop sharing the screen, we can see all the panelists again. And there's a question, Jesus, you have a question for Annabelle.
Yes, thank you. That's very interesting, the both of you, the presentation and the platform. And following up on your last slide, okay, the open approach of that platform, I wonder how you cope with a university such as UNED, where half the interactions occur outside the platform. And that presents a challenge, not just for us, but for any other LMS that we would like to implement at UNED. And the problem is that my view on this, that comes mainly from my own research, is that the short-sighted view of a student in a course is not enough nowadays, okay? And that's a challenge. Data is everywhere, is spread, the interaction of the students are spread, and if the universities such as UNED, okay, provide other tools that have to interact beyond using standards, I think there is a challenge for all of us. I don't know what's your view on this.
I fully agree on that, but that's so maybe my slide was a bit short-sighted for the presentation, because that is actually part of a longer presentation. So that's actually those interactions that are of interest to us. So what we have tried to build with all the solutions that we have in place and that we provide is a canonical data model. So based on our learning management system and the virtual classrooms and the integratable solutions, so anything like Badger or Big Group or other solutions, we are using this canonical data model and provide it through a means that is called BB data. So it's a reporting framework, but we can also tunnel in integrations and count the integrations. So that is one piece. So if they are integrated, of course, so with that, we are using REST APIs. So I think What we are trying to do is have a canonical data model that is based on standards and on a single API standard that can also be exported. So what we also do is do exports from the BB data canonical data model across all solutions that we provide to be exported into other BI tools. So you could export that to Cognos, for example, as well in your organization. If you have the means of, in your organization, tracking the interactions that you provide to students. Of course, you cannot track Facebook or anything, but there are hooks and possibilities that we are trying to approach with that.
Okay, we're just going to wrap up, but there's a question from somebody on the YouTube feed to Jesus, and it is someone who wants more information on the learner's feedback system you developed. That's probably a long answer, but sort of in the last couple of minutes.
Okay, I'm still have pending to send you links, but the problem is that everything is in Spanish, so I don't know if you wouldn't mind. I'm using right now the translator in order to provide you the links. But if you go to net and look for new students, okay, or acogida. Acogida is the Spanish word for well-being, okay? And you can find there more information, and using the translator, you can easily fulfill your interest in this. But let me tell you, that's a big challenge for all distance learning universities, okay? It's the real challenge. The real challenge is how to engage students, okay, in a way that they feel completely at home in our university, okay, and that involves too many avenues that I think they are still open, even in the research field, okay, because a student is more than a student, okay, it's a person, and as a human being, they have needs. And if we don't take them on board, we miss the target. It's incredible, but this is the case. But in parallel, we have a challenge, and we have to deal with ethical and privacy issues. So in the end, they have to be the ones that control their access to their data in terms of their own interests, okay? And that is something that is moving on, is related to European credentials, the Europass approach, now EFS I wallet, and other things that goes in, I think that go in this direction, okay? To have more data, but more control from the user.
Okay, thanks. So it's time to say goodbye. Thank you for attending today's webinar. And yes, my colleagues, the panel, everyone up on the video screen. Thank you for your contributions. I hope you can get hold of their presentations later. And remember that there are many more webinars. If you go to the Eden website and look for the distance the Distance and E-Learning Week, there are lots of webinars. So if you enjoyed this, there's still time to register for the others. I'd like to thank everyone on the panel today for your contributions. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again before long. Bye-bye. Okay. That's all for us.